Welcome to RVCast. In June of 2024, we held the inaugural RV convention. And today, we're excited to revisit an episode from that enormously successful event. Get ready for insights, tips, and inspiring stories from our special guests. And enjoy this informative episode as we dive into the world of RVing. Hello and welcome back to another segment of the RV Convention. I'm your host, Dave Stanley, coming to you from the cab of the Stanley Streamer. And this episode features Brooke Happe, a full-time RVer and entrepreneur with an inspirational journey. Brooke is the founder of BE Happe Design.
Yes.
Am I saying that right, Brooke? Or do you just like to say Be Happy?
Typically Be Happy, but it's whatever works, yes.
Okay. We'll go with Be Happe Design. It's a design, creation, and sales company focused on crocheted and knitted hats and palms. She was a practicing physical therapist who experienced a life-altering event which inspired her RV life and business venture. I'm excited to hear her journey, and Brooke, it's a great pleasure having you on this year's RV convention lineup.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. I was telling Brooke before we got on to this podcast that we have a little bit of a connection because my wife is a fanatic about crocheting and knitting. She uses a lot of the time while we're driving as full-time RVers to hone her craft. So yeah, I'm really excited to chat with you, Brooke. Let's start off with a little background. Give us a background on your life's journey that led you to both leave a career that you had invested a great amount of time in to start a business, as well as taking that business on the road as a full-time RVer.
I was born and raised in Northwest Iowa. Grew up there, went to college there, and always dreamed of being a physical therapist with eventually opening up a women's health clinic. And so I graduated from college, moved to Central Iowa to get my doctorate in physical therapy, and graduated in 2010. At that point, I was married for a couple years, started practicing, started growing a family, and kind of worked my way up as what you kind of dream of as a professional in the medical profession, and was a rehab director. And in 2015 was expecting our third child. We had 2 boys and then a girl, and my heart was just calling me to be home. I knew that I had, worked very hard to get to this point. I had made an impact on our family, but I knew that I would never get this time with our children back. They'd only be little forever, and I could always return to the practice. So I made that tough decision as a mom, stepped away from my career to be a stay-at-home mom of 3 kids under 4. And I thought, well, when they go back to school, I'll go back to work. And so I did a lot of work with my hands and manual therapy. So I wanted to keep my hands strong. And being a lifelong learner, I was like, well, I'll go pick up a crochet hook and some yarn. And this will be something great that I can kind of do once the kids are in bed. So I taught myself to crochet from YouTube and Pinterest. Just started making things, made hats for the hospitals, for the NICU, and donated them kind of as I was honing in on this new craft. And I was really struggling with going from getting ready every day as a medical professional to, a very unstructured day with 3 kids. And so I crocheted this slouch hat to hide my hair, make me feel a little bit more put together. And other moms started asking, like, hey, where'd you get that hat? It's a perfect, multi-season hat. And I was like, oh, I just made it. I never thought that someone would ask about a hat that I made. And they said, you should start like a business. You should really start something. So I started Be Happe back in 2016. And we would do a buy one, give one. So I'd make a hat and donate a hat to the Children's Hospital in Central Iowa. And fortunately, we were growing. I couldn't keep up with making one and giving one back. So in 2018, I was kind of searching for an answer as far as what can I do next to kind of make an impact. And our son was hospitalized. Our middle kiddo was hospitalized for 10 days in the PICU. So a 3-year-old in the hospital for 10 days, not being able to leave the room, was very difficult. And we found kind of a saving grace and new inspiration through Child Life Services. And so they basically kind of come in help the child during the difficult times. And I found that a lot of hospitals rely on donations. And I was like, this is perfect. We know the impact our, Be Happy can kind of help give back. So we changed our give back a portion of our proceeds. And that whole situation in 2018 really made us look at life, right? Like, what are we doing? Yes, we're reaching these goals that we really want to meet as a family, but we felt like we were missing everything in between. We were missing that journey and all those special moments because we were so focused on what's next. So we were weekend warriors, and I told my husband, hey, I'm staying home. He had always worked remotely, just needed to be near an airport to fly for business. And so we just said, let's sell everything. So we sold everything in June of 2019, have been full timing since. So that's kind of a little
Oh
bit of
my
our
goodness.
seasons of life so far.
Wow. So you had just finished your doctorate. How far postdoctorate to actually making that decision
Yeah, I
to be
practiced
a full
for
time?
close to 6 years before making that tough decision. And I had changed kind of, I was in the outpatient world where, we had to work until 7 or 8 p.m. because people, got off of work and still needed therapy. And so when my husband was gone, my receptionist would watch the kiddos in the office. And so I changed to a little bit more of a flexible job as a
Right.
rehab therapist and being able to choose my hours, kind of come and go, and just still, it was fulfilling, but my heart was calling me to be somewhere else.
Right. And I'm sure that your family has benefited greatly by your dedication to your kiddos. That's great. And I'm sure it goes without saying, but the beanie that you're wearing right now, that's one
Yes.
of your
Yep.
creations, yeah? That's great. That's
Thank
great. It
you.
looks fantastic. So, how's there's always that challenge when you become a full-time RVer. How do you balance the RV travel life and your kids' education and also running a business? Three significant
Yeah,
things
I
that you're
mean, for
working on.
me, I've always, kind of following my gut and thinking of life as in seasons. That may be 2 weeks, it may be a hectic 2 weeks of a focus, or it may be 6 months to a year. And so we always kind of think of our almost our stops in our travels and our the periods in our life as seasons. And so for a beanie business, we have seasons. Obviously, during the summer and winter, it's a little, or during the summer and spring, it's a little slower. And so we do, kind of alter the way that our family travels during that time. And so we kind of incorporate a lot of business into our homeschool journey. With having a product-based business in a tiny space, there's product that needs to be shipped, so there's lots of weighing and calculations and things that can happen in the homeschool journey. And then they also learn a lot of business aspects. So we do a lot of real
Yeah.
life situational type things with school, and then travel. We have a lot of structure in our schedule so that we get work done and then we can go explore and do things.
Oh, that's so cool. And your kids are really experiencing what they're learning rather than just
Yes,
reading it out of a
absolutely.
textbook or something like that. That's great. How extensive are your travels? Do you go on epic journeries or do you kind of stay in the
It
general
kind of
locale?
depends. Obviously, during the winter, there's a very, very short line as far as how far north we want to go. I mean, I grew up in Iowa, so I understand the cold. But when we set out on this journey, we said
Right.
we were going to chase sandal weather, and so that's essentially our goal. So during the winter, we like to stay in typically a location for a month to 5 months. And during that time, our kids have played activities or done sports. So they kind of get that, you know,
Right.
involvement, I guess, in a structured activity. And then the rest of the time we move, typically every 2 weeks to a month. We found that is kind of our sweet spot. We just changed to we were in a fifth wheel, we just changed to a Super C, and so that has been a learning process of we're like newbies all over again. So we wanted to travel faster with the kids growing up. They don't need as much space. So
Sure.
we're kind of relearning what works now in a different rig versus what worked before.
So that's interesting. So during the winter months, you actually stay put in one place, gives the kids some longevity and roots to where they can actually participate in sports and other activities like that. But then you can travel more extensively
Hmm.
as the seasons change. That's great. That's great. So let's pivot to Be Happy. Is that your family's sole source of income, or is your
So
husband
my
still
husband has
working?
worked remotely, like I said, for 20 plus years. He's just resigned and he's taking a sabbatical. So yes, yeah,
Wow.
we just want to, like I said, we feel like this is a change in seasons for us with getting a new rig and just life changes. And so we, just decided let's do it. So yeah, so I have a team of 14 females that help me make our beanies from across the US. It has grown from just my hands to a team. And so, yeah, we're prepping right now, even though it's just spring, that we are prepping for fall already. So,
Wow. Well, that's fantastic. So, and then like in the case of my wife, she had a grandmother who was a crocheter who kept saying, "As soon as you're this age, then I'll teach you how to crochet." And unfortunately, she passed away before Tracy hit that age. But that was her ingrained love of crocheting, and then she essentially taught herself as well. What was your inspiration that brought you to crocheting, and then how did you
yeah,
hone
I
your
mean, like
skills?
I said, I just was kind of, my grandmother liked to embroider and do a lot of sewing, and that was just like never my thing. My husband jokes that I couldn't even sew a button on a shirt before I learned to crochet. And so I don't know, I could never get the hang of it. She always tried to teach me. And so I just was kind of looking up, different crafts to do with your hands, and crochet seemed like uh, a simple thing. And so I just, like I said, I just bought a hook, grabbed some yarn from the craft store, and sat down until a YouTube video just clicked in my head. Yeah, and so I think part of it with enjoying the craft is that it initially started with a challenge, almost like I want to learn something, I need to keep my hands strong
Right.
so I can go back and practice physical therapy. And so there was no pressure to it. And then the business just kind of happened. So I think sometimes when we're learning something new, the pressure of like, I need to perfect this right away almost takes away from the enjoyment of the process of learning it.
So YouTube University once again comes to the rescue and launches a great career. So what is your product line? Do you just do
Yeah, so
beanies?
I mean, I used to make everything, and just like as we were obviously going from a home to an RV, I was like, well, I got to figure out how to decrease my offering because our space is limited. And I just looked at, the whole
Right.
business thing. What's the best profit? What's giving me the best revenue? And it was beanies. And so, yeah, we do like a crochet slouch hat. We do knitted like beanies like this, and then some with the big pom poms on it. And a couple of years ago, we started doing baseball caps that we source it from like a local Iowa business. And so we just a little bit of something to kind of keep our brand out there during the off season. But yeah, primarily it's the beanies.
Oh, that's great. And what would you say differentiates you from, going to a sporting goods store or whatever and buying a beanie? What sets you apart
Yeah, I mean,
from the
definitely a
competition?
handcrafted item is going to be much more quality. It's going to last, a lot longer, almost like an heirloom product. And our give back aspect of it, it's also made in the United States and made by all females. So that's kind of a little bit something different. And obviously, our customer avatar is a bit different than someone who'd want to shop at, get a beanie from a clothing store or a department store versus handmade. And that's just something that I've kind of had to realize, over the years of diving into the business aspect of
Yeah,
things.
that's great. So when somebody purchases something from Be Happy, they're not only getting a great, well-made, American-made, female business-owned product, but they're also giving to charity. And you mentioned that you do give back to Child Life Services. What's that
Yes, so
organization?
a child life specialist is essentially a healthcare provider who is very knowledgeable in like the medical profession, but also in education and psychological aspects of the child. And so their goal is to essentially keep the child when they're undergoing medical treatment or in the hospital keep their life as normal as possible with the tubes and all sorts of different things that they're going through. So they typically come into the hospital rooms and bring games during breathing treatments or slime or magnetiles and just different things. They really it's just like a little bit of a comfort blanket to the children and their families. Like I said, we're kind of impacted directly from it, and our kids don't talk about those days in the hospital, but they can name every movie that they watched. They can tell you the games that they played, and so it just shows how much of an impact those little things make. That they knew that their brother couldn't leave the hospital room, but it created memories even in like a very dark, scary time in our life. So we essentially just we donate a portion we use a portion of our proceeds from the Beanies to purchase wish list items to different hospitals. So typically, like when we were in San Diego, because of the pandemic, we used to go into the hospitals and donate, but that's not very few hospitals allow that anymore. So we'll just use our Amazon wish list, and we, use however much it is that month. We'll buy wish list items from the Amazon list, and it goes directly to the Child Life Services, and they use it kind of as needed.
Great. So is this wish list for that's an actual wish list of the child, or is it the wish list of the hospital for
It's for the
their
hospital,
resources?
and it kind of depends on, it's like what
Hmm.
they're potentially if there's like a specialty hospital or things like that. So, and the needs differ depending on the seasons also.
Sure. So do you have any specific example of where through your generosity, where you've been able to make a significant
I
difference?
mean, I can't say like specifically that I've seen the toy that we donated go to a hospital, but we do have, friends back in central Iowa whose kiddos have been hospitalized either, because they have long-term illnesses or because of a short-term thing. And they've shown, they sent me pictures of saying like, I don't know if you donated this, but we're using the Child Life Services puzzles and blocks and things like that. So they directly, I don't know, maybe it was something that we we purchased, but just them knowing and
Yeah.
them finding comfort in those items when they were in a similar situation, we know that we've made an impact.
Right. And from your personal experience, like you say, the memories that your children have of, oh, yeah, I played this game with the representative from the Child Life Services, for example, those types of things have had a direct impact,
Absolutely,
even on your
yes.
own life. And then, as far as, so you were a one person shop crocheting, you'd create a beanie, and then you'd sell it and go on to the next one. You found success in that. You mentioned briefly about being able to scale that business. Tell us about your transition from just being a sole crafter to actually scaling your
Yeah,
business.
I started locally with growing my team. I went to our church and found that they had a knitting group who made prayer shawls for people who, were either ill or were just dealing with difficult times. And so the head person was like, "Hey, I know there's a couple very skilled people who would probably be a great part of your team." And so that's kind of where it started. And that was when we were still in our home. And then COVID happened. I kind of started sharing more about our travel journey and the fact that I do run a product business in an RV. I know there's a lot of digital nomads out there, but an actual physical product business from an RV, I think, is not as popular, understandably. And so I think between the RV community kind of rallying behind what I was doing, and then also me really honing in on what was working, which was the beanies, and really focusing on going, deep and not wide in my business of products was really kind of what allowed me to scale. And then I got to the point where I needed more people, and there's a lot of people, probably like your wife who love the craft but don't want anything to do with the business aspect. And so was having people come to me and being like, I want to knit. I don't want my own shop, but I wouldn't mind making some money, with it. And so that's kind of how it's grown to the point of people either closing the shop that they had because they just didn't want to run the business logistics, but still make money and make things that they enjoy. So that's kind of been the evolution of it. Maybe someday we'll expand to more things, but for now, this is what's working.
Yeah. So that was the next question I had was what does the future hold? You're just wide open to the possibility of either continuing with the number of crafters that you have right now or possibility of perhaps even growing it. Give us some insight on kind of where you're leaning there and what the
Yeah,
future may hold.
it's a great question. This past year, so the beanie that I'm wearing was a beanie that I made from a very thin yarn, and it took me about 10 hours to make. And I knew as a business person, like I couldn't sell that and make money on it. So for about 2 years, was searching for a US manufacturer who would take my beanie and replicate it. And I got lots of no's. I got lots of, you need to go overseas, you can find someone there. And I was like, no, I want to stay in my lane. I want to stay as a US based brand. And so I did find someone. And so that was kind of our new big thing last year were these new beanies that are more of a traditional cap. So I honestly am just kind of going with the flow for what's next. We do
Yeah,
have kind of some plans of maybe some like bags and things like that, but it's hard as a small business owner to put effort into something that you think might work, but you have no idea if it'll actually work when it's out there.
right. So a great insight for anybody listening and who has an entrepreneurial idea that there is some benefit in just focusing on a single product and just really making that the high point of your business, and then as that succeeds you can grow from there. We see a lot of businesses that want to be
Hmm.
everything for everybody, and do you have any comment on the benefit of focusing on really your
Yeah, I
niche
mean, I think
product?
for me, the focus was I wanted to be kind of known for something, not known for everything. Like crochet, I want to be like, okay, that's the beanie
Yeah,
person. And once I'm known for that, then I can kind of expand and get my core my core community to under to be like, oh yeah, let's do this. But I think when you're doing all things and trying to either make all things or sell all things, people don't really know what you're about, or what you kind of not necessarily stand for, but what your brand is about. So for me, just going, like I said, going deep and not wide, I can perfect what I'm doing and then go from there versus trying to have my hands in all things and not do everything great, just doing one thing great and then expanding from there.
yeah, for sure. And as you were talking about the uniqueness of an American made and handmade, takes me back to an experience that my wife had at our church where they were crocheting bandages for third world countries. And the interesting comment that I took away from that was the reason that particularly the women of these third world countries loved these hand crocheted bandages was because of the American hygiene, soaps, lotions, those get caught in the fibers of the bandages, and they would almost just embrace that bandage as a luxury heirloom item that you wouldn't get from a
Right,
manufactured
right.
loom, so
Yeah,
to
yeah. I
speak.
mean, I think there's a lot to be said about something
So,
that's handmade. It truly is uniquely different. It may look the same as I might make two of the same hats, but there's going to be, a little bit of a difference. And that makes me think because my son really likes to crochet and he's learning, and we found that you can kind of almost essentially tie together plastic bags and crochet little like blankets or mats out of plastic garbage bags or shopping bags and give them to
yeah,
like the homeless, or people in need. So that's kind of our current ongoing homeschool craft project is working on that. So you never know what could inspire someone.
you never knew. And my mother was a crocheter and she taught me to crochet, but I could
Yep.
never get past just a chain. And so if anybody wanted a rope to stretch around the equator, I'm your person, but don't ask me to make
I love
a
it.
blanket out of it. So Let's transition to your RV life. How have you found the transition from living in a home to living in an RV? Is it everything that you
Absolutely,
anticipated?
yes. You know, I mean, I think that with any different living situation, there's always going to be challenges. For us, like I said, you know,
Sure.
we've kind of think of our seasons as having a why and what's this focus. You know, there's times where we go to places and it's let's go see as much as possible. Let's go do this and that. There's other times where it's about community. And for us, that has kind of, I would say, put all of our focus into trying to balance, you know, life and everything with the travel homeschool is finding that why for that specific reason. And so for us starting out traveling, it was we want to get out of the winter, the Iowa winters. And so, you know, people who say, well, how can you live in a small space? I mean, we're rarely inside. Like we sleep inside. We have dinner inside some nights. You know, sometimes we're at the picnic table, but when you have this nice weather and all these things to go see and do, you know, you're not really in that space. And it really reminds you of how little you need and how simple life can be, even though you get, you know, more life from less around you.
Right, right. So, what would be the main nugget of advice that you would give to someone who is considering not only becoming an RV full timer, but becoming an RV full timer with family? Any
Yeah, I mean,
particular
I
advice
would
that
say
sticks
just
out?
know your why. There's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days, there's going to be days where it doesn't go as planned and you might not make it to point B where you thought you were going to make it, but remember your why. You know, why are you doing this? Is it time with your family? Is it to simplify life? Is it to see as many things as possible? Because I think on those bad days when things don't go as planned, knowing, okay, like we spent we spent the time on the side of the road changing a tire, but my boys, you know, learned about how to change a tire or, you know, learned how to communicate or safety, you know, precautions like when you're on the side of the road. So I think there's always something that you can, something positive or something that you can learn from in on those bad days. So definitely know your why and keep that in the back of your head.
Right. And I think that a lot of people have in mind the why of I just need to get away from the chaos. And so do you have any insight on having uh, a positive looking why as opposed to I've got to just get rid of this negative
Yeah, I mean,
why?
there's still
Any
chaos.
thoughts
Like you're
there?
not going to run away from chaos. It's just different, essentially with the RV life.
Right.
Yeah, you know, I think
Right.
it's all about perspective, honestly. And I think when you see how much flexibility and how much control you're able to, or how you are able to control your life with living in an RV and kind of deciding what to do, you know, I think that that changes your perspective in general on things. So yeah, I mean, I think just for me it's always been if you feel it in your heart and you feel it in your gut, go for it. And I feel like you aren't going to fail. The only time that you're failing is when you don't follow like your heart and your gut. If you want a full time, even if you last a day or you last a week or a month, at least you tried. And you're never going to be able to, you know, you wouldn't go back and say, oh, what if I, you know, try, you know, what if I would have done this or that? Like at least you did it and you failed. You know, I don't see that as a failure. So yeah, I mean, I think just
Right.
keeping an open perspective and a positive perspective on things.
I love it. I love it. Thanks for that. Thanks for that viewpoint. And as you look back, is there anything that you wish you had known back then that you know now about being a full-time RVer and running a business while being a
I think like as an RVer, I'm very introverted. So you kind of have to put yourself out there to meet people. And I'm not saying that that's like that it's impossible. I mean, there are so many wonderful people, and I think what I've come to realize is that for the people who RV, you immediately have a connection with someone because they want to live their life to the fullest. Like, and so you can immediately connect on that versus, let's say, your next door neighbor who it's just a situational thing that you're kind of associated or connected. I mean, you have a really deep connection with someone when you meet someone from the RV community. So keeping that in mind when you're trying to kind of meet people, I would say would be important. And as far as a product business or a business on the road, I mean, I think it's kind of like what we've talked about is go deep into something and do it 100% or perfect it and then expand. Honestly, I think moving to the RV was probably the best thing that happened for my business because I was able to focus on the beanies. I was able to be kind of become known for, a product. And in the future, if I expand or even with our baseball caps, like it wasn't totally out of the realm of headwear. So that's what I would say would be just focus on one thing, perfect it, and then go wide with it after that.
Yeah, I love that because from my personal experience, before we became full-time RVers, there's the big house to take care of and all of the stuff, right? And so there was always something to distract me from the focus of what it was that I really wanted to pursue. So I love that perspective, Brooke. Lastly, what's the biggest benefit that you've gleaned from this whole experience, would
The
you
most
say?
fulfilling thing is seeing our children's like not only our family's relationship and the closeness and that has developed from this, but like seeing my children's relationship, like they're their best friends, and I know that at the end of the day, when they're older and friends come and go, like they'll always have this relationship. And I think it was just it's because of the time that we spent together and the memories that we've made. We always joke that when we go to like the beach or somewhere, they have the whole beach to run around, but when you go to look and I go to take a picture, they're literally like as close as possible, probably sometimes touching each other. And so, it's like they have this whole
Right.
space, but they just have this bond, and I'm so grateful for that connection that they've had, and for, obviously our family, but as they grow and kind of go out into the world, I think that'll be something that they'll always cherish.
I love it. I love the fact that you look at all of the things that you have benefited from being a full-time RVer, and the thing that it comes back to is connection, and particularly connection with your family. That's great. Are you documenting your travels anywhere
Um,
on a blog or
yeah, I mean, I
or
share kind of our travels on social media, but I'm trying to do a better job of actually like documenting like the locations and the things that we go to on a blog. So I might be a couple months behind, but it's there.
okay. So where can people go to follow your
Yes,
journey?
they can. So our blog is Be Happy. So BEHAPPE.blog.com. And you can shop our beanies. You can follow us on social media, which is B.E.Happy, HAPPE. And so that's kind of our behind the scenes there.
Oh, great. For all of you watching that want to follow Brooke or to access her product website, please check the show notes. We'll put links to how to reach out and follow Brooke, and also to contact. Brooke, this has been a real pleasure. Thank you for sharing your inspiring adventure. And I wish you the best as you move forward in growing your business, spending great time with your family, and experiencing life to its fullest. We really appreciate you spending the
Thank
time
you for
to
having
be
me.
with us today. It's our pleasure. And stay tuned for more insights, stories, and tips as we continue our convention lineup. Until then, we'll see you on the road. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of RVCast. We hope you enjoyed hearing about our latest adventures on the road.
And don't forget, if you're itching to explore unique and interesting RV destinations, be sure to download the Curb and Turf app.
That's right. Curb and Turf, it's your go-to for finding those hidden gems off the beaten path. And hey, if you own property and you want to share your slice of paradise with fellow travelers, why not become a host yourself?
Absolutely. Just head over to curbandturf.com/start hosting to get started, or reach out to us for more information.
Yeah, and you don't want to miss a future episode. So be sure to subscribe to RVCast so that you never miss a beat.
Until next time, happy trails and safe travels.
We'll see you on the road.